Okay, shalom everyone. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, 2020, and we are joining together for our weekly lunch and learn on Parshat HaShavua. This week, Parshat Toldot, and we are doing a different mitzvah each week, a mitzvah either explicitly noted in the Parsha or alluded to in the Parsha. We're still in Parshiot that do not really have explicit mitzvot in them, but we have a very interesting discussion nonetheless today. Let me share my screen. Okay, today we are going to be discussing lying and when is lying ever allowed? In what context? And what our sources have to say about lying? So I just want to make sure could everyone see the source sheet on the page?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, wonderful. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to use the raise hand function that's available in Zoom. Or you could put something in the chat, or you could, if you have your screen on, you could also try to get my attention by waving like a piece of cake or something in the screen, which will catch my attention. Actually, a chocolate milkshake would do the trick too. Maybe afterwards, whoever wants to meet me at Baskin Robbins for a chocolate milkshake, we could set up to meet, social distance chocolate milkshake. Okay, Andrea, I will increase the page size. How's that? I will make the reading bigger. How's that, Andrea? Good? Thumbs up? Yeah? I can't see your thumb. I can only see your eyebrows. All right, there we go. Okay, so today we're going to talk about lying. So where do we, well, first of all, let's just read one important statement by the rabbis about what they think about lying, or about what they think about the truth, actually. And we have this here from Pirkei Avot. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, al shlosha divarim ha'olam omed. The world depends or stands on three things: al hadin, on justice; v'al ha'emet, on truth; v'al ha'shalom, and on peace. Truth, justice, and the American way, sort of what we have here in this Mishnah. But the world depends on three things: din, emet, and shalom. So this statement in and of itself is a reminder to us how important the idea of truth is in our tradition. Okay? Having said that, in this week's Parsha, we have a significant breach of trust, and let's say an episode where Yaakov, right, one of our forefathers, does not tell the truth. He actually distorts the truth in a conversation with his father. Okay? Of course, I'm talking about the famous episode of the birthright blessings, right? When Yaakov wants to bless Asav, his firstborn, and Rivka does not want this to happen, and she wants Yaakov to get the bracha. And if you remember the story, she and Yaakov together hatch this plan where Yaakov disguises himself. He wears Asav's clothing, and he's actually almost caught when Yaakov says, "Hakol kol Yaakov v'hayadayim yidei Asav." The voice is the voice of Jacob, and the hands, he felt his hands. He like disguised himself. He put on his clothes, or the Midrash says he put on some like sheepskins to make himself feel hairier than he really was. Hakol kol Yaakov v'hayadayim yidei Asav. The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Asav. Who is this? Who is this? And let's pick up the story right where Yitzchak says, who is this? And that's what I have for you here from Bereshit Chav Zayin. Vayomer lo Yitzchak aviv, mi ata. Yitzchak says to his son, we know is Yaakov, who are you? And listen to what he says. Vayomer ani bincha b'chorcha Asav. I am Asav. I am
Very specific.
your son, Asav, your firstborn. That sounds a lot like what?
Like a big lie.
Like a big lie, right? I mean, just he's not telling the truth. And then after that, you
froze.
leave ochel mikol v'terem tavo v'archeu gam baruch yihiyeh. I'm sorry. I missed. I'm sorry. This is afterwards. This really is Asav. Okay, Asav. Excuse me. This is when Asav comes, and already Yaakov has given the Yitzchak has given the blessing of the firstborn to Yaakov, and then Asav comes back and says, "Hi, I'm back with the food you ordered." And Yaakov is, Yitzchak is confused. He says, what do you mean? Someone else just brought it to me. Who are you? He says, I'm Asav. And then Yitzchak gets very upset. He says, I just gave the bracha away to someone else. The who is the one who came beforehand and gave me? Now I can't take away the bracha. Kishmoa Asav et divrei aviv vayitzak tzaka gidola umara ad ma'od. When Asav hears that he lost out on the bracha, he gives out a bitter sobbing, and he says to his father, "Vayomer la'aviv, barcheni gam ani avi, give me a bracha also, my father." And then what does Yitzchak say? Vayomer ba achicha b'mirma vayikach birchatecha. Your brother came with guile and took away your bracha. Now I want to read you the pasuk that I meant to give you, which is in Perek Chav Zayin, a few psukim earlier. Okay, I'll read you the psukim because these are the psukim where we read Yaakovs Lie. Okay, let me just read it to you. It's pasuk Yud Zayin. Vatitein et hamatamim ve'et halechem asher asata biyad Yaakov bina. Right, so he gives the food to Yitzchak. Vayavo el aviv vayomer avi vayomer hineni mi ata bini. He comes to his father, and he says, "Father," and then Yitzchak says, "I'm here," and then he says, "Who are you, my son?" If you remember, Yitzchak couldn't see so well. He says, "Who are you, my son?" And here's Yaakov's words: "Vayomer Yaakov el aviv, Anochi Asav b'chorecha." I am Asav, your firstborn. Okay, those are the psukim I should have put in this source sheet. Okay, I made a mistake. Vayomer Yaakov el aviv, Anochi Asav b'chorecha. I am Asav, your firstborn. Asiti ka'asher dibarta, Eli. I have done what you asked me to do. Meaning, I brought you the food that you wanted. Kumna shiva ve'achla mitzedi ba'avur tivar chani nafshecha. Eat from the food that I hunted, so that you can bless. So that you can bless me. Okay, so that's the untruth, right? That Yaakov says. He says, "I am your firstborn, Asav." So how are we to understand this? So I want to break up today's class into a few parts. First, I want to discuss how the commentaries understood what Yaakov did, and then look at some other sources that talk about lying in general and how we're supposed to look at that within in halacha and Jewish thought. So, Rashi, commenting on what Yaakov said, Anochi Asav b'chorecha, I am your firstborn. Listen, look what Rashi does here. Okay, and then let's try to understand what's going on. Okay, here's what Rashi does. Anochi hamevi lecha ve'esav hu b'chorecha. Rashi adds a comma in the text. I am he that brings you the food. Asav is your firstborn. Okay, now in the right, I see Nitza is laughing and Shula is laughing. Right, it seems like. Well, let me ask you, what is Rashi doing here? Right, I just read you the pasuk. It is not the straightforward shot for sure. Right, that does not seem to come across as the straightforward reading of the pasuk. Right, what is Rashi doing here? Someone want to try to explain Rashi here? What is he trying to do?
He's trying to justify what Yaakov did. Actually.
He's not even trying to, no, it's more than that.
Lie.
Right, he's not justifying the lie.
No.
He's saying it's not even a lie.
Not a lie.
How could Yaakov, God forbid, lie? After all, he's Yaakov. Right, it's a little circular reasoning. Right? How do we know that Yaakov didn't lie? Because he's Yaakov.
I just love it.
Right? He couldn't lie. So it's one thing if he would justify the lie, which some other commentaries do. They say he had to do it. There's no way he could have allowed Asav to be blessed. Had Asav had all that power, it would have been corrupted and would have been terrible. So he had to lie. Okay, that's a justification of the lie. Here, Rashi is saying he didn't even lie. Unfortunately, Yitzchak didn't understand what he said. Anochi, I am the one who brought you the food. Asav hu b'chorecha. Asav's your firstborn. It's a real long shot as to that's what Yaakov really meant. But nonetheless, Rashi is unwilling to accept the possibility that Yaakov actually lied. Okay.
Rabbi.
Sorry?
Is this one of those instances? Well, actually, no, because the Hebrew would not have commas. I was going to say, is that one of those cases where it depends on where you put the comma?
Well, it does, but you're right. The Torah text has no comma, that's what allows Rashi to do this.
Yeah.
Rashi could do this because he could say, well, there's no God-given punctuation here. And so I could do what I want with the text. But again, as we read the actual meaning of the text, it seems like it's a real stretch. Nitza?
I'm sorry to say, Anochi hamevi lecha, comma, cannot be before ve. Before the ve, the vav shva cannot come a comma, according to the dikduk.
But that's not the text. The text is Anochi, Asav b'chorecha.
I know. It depends how you read it.
Right, I'm saying there's no vav. There's no
vav.
There's no vav in the pasuk. These are the words of the pasuk.
No, Nitza, it's okay. According to the dikduk, you can say Anochi kama Asav b'chorecha.
That's fine. But not the next one. Anochi hamevi lecha.
That's just Rashi explaining.
Cannot be a comma.
That's not the text. Okay, let me explain. Nitza, that's not the text of the Torah. That's Rashi explaining what happened. The text of the Torah is simply Anochi Asav b'chorecha. 3 words. So Rashi says Anochi psik Asav b'chorecha.
Right.
And that's what he said. What does that mean? I'm the one who brought you the food, and Asav's your firstborn. That's what it means. But the text is just those 3 words. Okay.
Okay, but why did he put his clothes, the sheep clothes?
Yes, I mean the whole thing doesn't really fit into the rest of the story. If he wasn't trying to deceive his father, then why did he have to go through this whole ingenious attempt to do that? Correct. Okay. Next, Rabbeinu Bachya says something similar. He says, it's very interesting. Let's read it. I'll read it. We'll read it in English. When Yaakov said, Anochi Asav b'chorecha, he referred to the fact that he had acquired the birthright from Asav. He meant, I am the one who replaces your firstborn Asav. If you remember, earlier, Asav comes back from hunting, and he's tired, and he's hungry, and Yitzchak happens to have some soup. And Asav says, give me the soup. And Yaakov says, okay, I'll give you the soup if you sell me the birthright. And Asav says, Lama ze li b'chora? What do I need this for? You can have the birthright, just give me the soup. And so Rabbeinu Bachya says that was a serious negotiation deal between Yaakov and Asav. Yaakov now is Asav. I think this is what Rabbeinu Bachya is saying. Yaakov became Asav. He is Asav's malei makom. Right? So he says, I am Asav. I am the one who replaces Asav. He knew that the only reason his father wanted to bestow the blessing on Asav was that Asav was the firstborn. He therefore hinted to his father Yitzchak that Asav had long ago ceased to be the firstborn when he had sold his birthright to him. Yaakov was therefore entitled to receive the blessing his father wanted to bestow at this time. So here you see it's something different. It's not quite like Rashi. It's not a lie, but it's not a grammatical fix of the text. Here it's an existential change. Yaakov is Asav. Asav lost his identity. He considered himself Asav's representative. And what does that mean? That's a very important word in halacha. When someone is your representative, your shaliach, shlucho shel adam kimoto. They are you, and they have all of your capacities and abilities. So he is now Asav. And we know that legally speaking, anyone who's the representative of the principal may act on behalf of the principal. If we need proof of this, and the Rabbeinu Bachya here brings such a beautiful, powerful proof. He says the best proof is that the angels who are acting on behalf of God are accorded God's name. Even such as the angel in Exodus 3:1 who referred to himself as Ani Hashem, I am the Lord. There are numerous such examples. One example is found in Genesis 31:13, etc., where the angels call themselves God. Now, we know that that's not true, but since they are God's shlichim, that's what malach is, they take on God's name. So when Yaakov says, Anochi Asav b'chorecha, this was the equivalent of saying, I am Asav to the extent that I am your firstborn. Had he merely said, I am Asav, without adding the words, your firstborn, this would have been a lie. The reason he added your firstborn was to draw attention to the fact that the blessing about to be dispensed was meant for the firstborn. When in response to Yitzchak's question, Atazeh b'ni Asav, are you indeed my son Asav, meaning the one I am supposed to bless? Yaakov answered, Ani, this is me. I am the one. Had he added the word Asav, he would have lied. By saying Ani, he merely meant that he was the one entitled to the blessing. So that's also a little bit of a stretch, but a fascinating idea, if that's true, right, about how Yaakov saw himself. He really saw himself as Asav's replacement. And as such, he was not lying, because Yaakov wasn't really, remember what Yaakov is thinking. Yitzchak wasn't really interested whether it was Asav or Yaakov. He cared about one thing: was the firstborn standing before him? Was the one who deserved the blessing standing before him? If the answer is yes, I'm going to give him the bracha. If the answer is no, I'm not going to give him the bracha. Yaakov bought the right to the firstborn, so he has to tell his father, I'm the one who you want here. I'm Asav. I'm the firstborn. Okay, so that is a fascinating approach by Rabbeinu Bachya. Okay. Although Linda makes a good point, he sold his birthright, great, But then wouldn't it have been more straightforward, Linda, for Yaakov to simply say, no, Dad, it's not Asav. But let me tell you what happened. Your son sold me the birthright for some porridge. So really, I deserve the birthright. Right? It's very it's just always struck me as odd. Now, of course, Yaakov could deny it. I don't know if they had some sort of bill of sale or any sort of proof, right? But it seems odd that Yaakov never took that route. In any case, you're right in that sense, Linda. He did sell the birthright, and that is what, in fact, gave Yaakov the right to do that. Now, okay, now that we have just a general understanding, by the way, other Parshanim say no. Yaakov outright, flat out lied, but he had no choice. He had to lie because it would have been a disaster had Asav been given that blessing. Okay, so with that in mind, let's move on to some of the halachot, right? To the aspect of lying and when is that allowed or not allowed. Okay, so we have a pasuk in the Torah that says, right here, Pas Shemot, Perek Chav Gimel, Pasuk Zayin, which says, Midvar Sheker Tirchak, keep far from falsehood. Okay, seems pretty straightforward. Now, so this pasuk may be the reason why Rashi and Rabbeinu Bachia go so far as to try to explain that Yaakov didn't really lie, because we have an explicit verse in the Torah, and it's not the only one. There are other verses in the Torah that speak to us against lying, and so we're not supposed to lie. Okay, so what is this talking about, though? Right, there's actually an interesting split that we see both in the Gemara and in commentaries on the Gemara and in Rishonim and in later authorities as to when this pasuk applies. Okay, let's look at two Gemarot, and that will explain what I mean. The Gemara in Masechet Shavuot says as follows: Tana Rabbana, Minayin l'dayan shelo yaseh sanigaron l'divarav Talmud lomar midvar sheker tirchak. From where is it derived that a judge should not engage in advocacy for his own statements and devise various pretexts to justify his erroneous rulings? Midvar sheker tirchak. Right, according to this Gemara in Shavuot, I'll ask you, according to this Gemara in Shavuot, in what context does the Torah tell us to distance ourselves from falsehood? In what context? Anybody?
Studying.
Studying. No, this is talking about not studying. What's this talking about?
Study of,
In court.
In court. This is talking about a case of court, a dayan, a judge. Good for you. Right? Minayin l'dayan. How do we know that a judge is not allowed to lie? That he's not allowed to try to, he has a ruling and maybe it proved wrong, but in order to save face or whatever the case may be, he's going to come up with all sorts of explanations why he's right. Midvar sheker tirchak. You're not allowed to lie. And the Gemara goes on. Uminayin l'dayan shelo yeshev talmid bor lefanav. How do we know that a judge should, and from where does it derive with regard to a judge that a student who is an ignoramus should not sit before him? Because that may actually lead to an incorrect ruling. Answer, midvar sheker tirchak. Another situation where this is in the context of a beit din, of a courthouse. So according to the Gemara in Shavuot, when the Torah says in Shemot, midvar sheker tirchak, it's not talking about, someone's at a dinner table and makes up a story or tells something that says that they're not true. This is talking about in the legal case, midvar sheker tirchak. But what about outside of a legal case, right? Is there anything that teaches us not to lie outside of court are we supposed to understand that because the Gemara applies midvar sheker tirchak to court, that's the only place it applies, but we are allowed to lie in other contexts?
No, in Aseret HaDibrot, right? 10 commandments. It says that we are not allowed to lie, right?
No.
No?
What does it say that?
בעשרת הדיברות לא כתוב? Okay, so maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, I mean, there are other psukim. There are other psukim that talk to us about the prohibition.
It says, לא תעיד בחברך את שקר. That's
Okay, that's again, but that's also in a case of a court. That's witness.
right.
That's a court. Right? Exactly. Yeah.
כתוב ממש לא תשקר בעשרת הדיברות.
Okay, so let's go on. There's a Gemara in Ketubot that has a different. How do we praise the bride? What do we say when we're dancing before the bride? So the Gemara says, Kala kemot shehi. Right? The Gemara says, you just be honest. Ubeit Hillel omrim kala na'eh b'chasuda, like the song says, a fair and attractive bride.
So even though
The
she's
bride
not
is fair
allowed
and
to
attractive.
Pleasing.
Okay, you always say the bride is fair and attractive, right? Beit Shammai said, "Harei shahaita chigeret osuma omrim la kala na'ev chasuda." If she was lame or blind, does one say with regard to her she's fair and attractive? What if she's not fair and attractive? Are you supposed to lie?
Yes, not to make somebody.
After all, the Gemara says, after all, the Torah says, "Midavar sheker tirchak." You're not allowed to lie. So what do you mean you're allowed to say the bride is beautiful? So here you see, right? Here you see that Beit Shammai at least applies midavar sheker tirchak to a wider context than a court case. We're going to explain the Gemara in a moment, but first we saw the Gemara in Shavuot that said it only applies in a court case. But now we have a Gemara in Ketubot that says maybe it applies in a broader context. Okay, right? Right? If she's not attractive, Omrim la kala na'eva chasuda v'Torah amra midvar sheker tirchak. Amru lahem Beit Hillel Beit Shammai. Beit Hillel says to Beit Shammai, "L'divreichem misha lakach mekach ramen ashuk yishabechenu beinav or yiganenu beinav." That's not nice. If someone comes and they show you something that they just purchased, and they're all excited about it, which you would imagine the husband's excited about his new bride, you're going to say, "Oh, I don't like the color," or "I don't like this, I don't like that." No, you're not going to do that. That's not nice. Are you gonna praise it or condemn it in their eyes? What do you say? A normal human being, right? Someone who has sort of manners would praise it in their eyes. Here's where we learn that a person should be empathetic and should carry themselves in a nice way. Okay, but so notwithstanding here, let's understand what's going on here. This is not a license to lie in every situation. The Gemara is telling us in certain limited situations, you're allowed to lie. Doesn't my bride look beautiful? Yes, she looks beautiful. I just bought this new car. It's, you don't like the color. You don't say, "Oh, I would have gotten a different color." You say, "That's lovely. Enjoy it with mazel," right? I just painted the walls of my house. Whatever, right? So that's a situation where you're trying to be mu'urevet im habriot, but you're not allowed to stam lie. You're not allowed to just come out and make something up. Why not? Midavar sheker terchak. So here we have this split. The Gemara in Shavuot applies midavar sheker terchak to a legal case, right? But the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot says no. Midavar sheker terchak applies in all cases except when it doesn't. It applies in all cases except when if you don't tell the truth, then if you do tell the truth, you're going to be really insulting the person. And we're going to see that this midavar sheker terchak split follows its way down into later sources. Okay, I see some hands and some comments. So first I have Linda here in a comment. Beauty is not a beholder, it's an opinion, not comparing apples to apples here. That's true, Linda, but the guy's asking my opinion. He's saying, doesn't my bride look beautiful? So he is asking, it is my opinion. What if I think she's not beautiful? So according to the Gemara, I should say, yes, she's beautiful, right? Even if I don't think she's beautiful.
That the whole thing is Isaac was pretending, I'm sorry, I'm all mixed up here. One son was pretending to be the other son, and that's not a matter of opinion, so you're not comparing the same sort of thing.
No, that's a different situation.
Right, one is totally deceit. Like I said, when you engage in deceit to get what you want, that is basically a lie.
Yeah, yes, and that's why
Okay.
that's why we saw those commentaries go out of their way
Okay.
to explain why. Correct. I agree that it would not necessarily fit in here. I agree with that. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
I didn't understand your comment. Okay, Mom, you could go, and then pizza.
I just think that this is not a lie that's going to hurt anybody, or like in a legal court. This is a lie to make the other person feel better.
Interesting.
by-
That is a fascinating distinction, right, between a lie that a harmless crime and a crime that's not harmless. So, by the way, it's important to note that I did not bring this source, but the Uraim, who is a Rishon, a medieval commentary on, who wrote a book of mitzvot, he mentions the pasuk of midavar sheker tirchak as a biblical commandment that one is not allowed to lie. However, he says the biblical prohibition only applies when as follows: Chayav litrachek sheyuchal lavo shkaro lidei hezek chavero. Just like you said, according to the Uraim, the biblical prohibition only applies if the lie is going to hurt someone. However, two caveats to that. One is commentaries on the Uraim say that's true, but the rabbinic prohibition of lying still applies even if it's not going to hurt someone. So which means in the case of the bride, we need to come up with another reason why it's okay, other than it doesn't hurt anyone. And in this case, that's why the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say, well, it's okay because it doesn't hurt anyone, because that would still be asur d'Rabbanan. It would still be rabbinically prohibited. So instead, the Gemara says, you're allowed in that case because that makes you empathetic, right? It would be very cruel for you to say the bride is homely when the groom asks you, okay? But nonetheless, the Uraim does say that exact point. Another issue that the commentaries are concerned of is that even if there's no specific prohibition to lie, let's say when no one's hurt, or even outside of the courtroom, the problem is if you lie in certain situations, one will become accustomed to lie, and then one will lie when one is not allowed to lie. Right? So I think there's a children's story about this, where the white lie grows and grows and grows, right? I can't remember the name. But that's an additional concern. Even if the lie doesn't hurt someone, if someone is so accustomed to lying, even when it doesn't hurt someone, they may end up lying when it counts. So you have to be careful nonetheless. Okay.
You have to remember your lie.
Nitza.
Is that called sheker lavan?
Yep.
I mean, that's what we would call it, I guess. And I don't think in halacha we have sheker lavan. We have what we do have in halacha. It seems though, Nitza, is permissible lying and not permissible lying. Now, by the way, a lot of the commentaries on this Gemara in Ketubot go out of their way to say it's not really lying, almost like with Rashi and Rabbeinu Bachya. When I say the bride is beautiful, really I'm saying in your mind the bride is beautiful. I am agreeing with you that you think the bride is beautiful. I myself, I'm going to keep my own personal opinion to myself, but you think she's beautiful. Or, things along those lines. Okay, Colin.
I'm basically going to say what you said. I thought it was Hillel that said that you're looking at it through the eyes of the groom or the person that made the purchase.
Right.
And so therefore it's not a lie.
Right. Okay. Now let's go on. Let me see any more comments here. Okay, that's what Colin said. Okay, great. So how do the commentaries explain this pasuk midvar sheker tirchak? So let's look at quickly the Ibn Ezra from matters of falsehood. This speaks to the judge that he should not render false judgment. So right away, like the two Gemarot, the Ibn Ezra goes, yes, like the Gemara in Shavuot says, this is only about a judge. The Rashbam, what does he say? Im nireh be'einecha din mirumeh, ve'edim rumaim, ve'enat hayochol la'achisham, hitrachek me'oto hadin, ve'al tadin bo klal. If you think that the judgment is crooked and the witnesses are crooked, stay away from the whole case. Also speaking to a judge. Right, so you see the Ibn Ezra and the Rashbam view this in the context of a case of a court case and not dealing with all situations. Again, like we saw the split in the Gemara. Okay, Seforno, on the other hand, midvar sheker tirchak mikol davar sheyuchal lesavev sheker. Stay clear from any word or thing that can cause falsehood. As our sages say, should we add?
You froze.
We have this split also in the commentaries. Some commentaries say midvar sheker tirchak only applies in a court situation. And some say, no, mikol davar, in all situations, we have to avoid lying. Okay? What about the poskim? What about the halachic authorities? So you should know the Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvot uses the pasuk of midvar sheker tirchak with regard to a court case. Okay? Regard to a court case. Now, when we mentioned before the Aseret HaDibrot, there is mention in the Aseret HaDibrot about accepting false testimony and things like that, but not explicitly what we are talking about. And if you see here, the Torah therefore prohibited the judge from hearing such words in order to keep him from having false and improper ideas in his mind. The Mechilta says the verse, do not accept a false report, prohibits a judge from hearing the claim of one litigant without the other litigant. And later, and what does he quote here? Regarding the same prohibition, the Torah commands, keep away from anything false. Midvar sheker tirchak, as explained in the 4th chapter of the Gemara and Shavuot, which is the Gemara that we learned that put this in the context of a court case. So the Rambam, interestingly enough, does not at all list an independent prohibition against lying generally. He has a prohibition against lying in court, but not lying generally. That's the Rambam. Others, on the other hand, are different. Sharei Tshuva says as follows. He talks about liars, and he talks about different groups of liars. And in group number 4 of liars, he says, Achelek harivi'i, hameshaker b'sipur hadivarim asher shama umachalif k'tzatam b'mitkavein, a person who tells a story and changes the details on purpose. Ve'ein lo to'elet b'shkarav, v'lo hefsed l'zulato. And there's no reason for him to lie here. Aval ko mishpato me'avato sheker midaber tzedek sela. Upamim shehu bodeh milibo sipur hadivarim kulo. Sometimes he even tells a bigger lie. Va'ish hazeh yakel ansho mitzad echad Al ki ein hefsed leish b'shkarav upachazuto. This person's not hurting anyone with their lie. Aval gadol me'od onsho be'oz panav yavat sheker. However, his punishment is great because he's showing a disrespect and a love of falsehood. V'yichbad avono ki yahavehu livli to'elet. V'amar Shlomo alav shalom yafiach kizavim eid shaker, which I brought the pasuk on the bottom, a false witness testifying lies and one who incites brothers to quarrel. Perush, im tireh adam asher yafiach kizavim b'sichato b'sipur devarav. If you see a person who lies in their story, teda ki tivi'ehu hamidah hazot la'id sheker be'achiv. That's going to bring them to lie, like I said, when it matters in court. Okay, so again, but what's important for us to know is the Sharei Tshuva seems to indicate that lying is in the category of what we call divrei Kabbalah, not quite rabbinic, not quite deoraita, somewhere in the middle, and it's learned from the something which is generally learned from the Nevi'im, from the prophets. So we have the Rambam, who doesn't have a general prohibition of lying at all, to the Sharei Tshuva, who has a general prohibition against lying, especially because it may lead to one lying in court, and it is a sort of rabbinic prohibition. And then we have the Sefer HaChinuch, who says that it is actually a biblical prohibition. In his counting of the mitzvot, mitzvah number 74, the root of this commandment, the commandment not to lie, is well known as falsehood, is abominable and vile in the eyes of all. There is nothing more disgusting than it. A malediction and curse are in the house of its lovers. This is because God, may he be blessed, is truthful God, and everything that is within him true. And blessing is only found and resting upon those that make themselves similar to him in their deeds, to be truthful like he is truthful, to be merciful like he is merciful, and to be purveyors of kindness like he is of great kindness. But regarding anyone whose deeds are the opposite of his good traits, and are the masters of falsehood, which is exactly the opposite of his traits, the opposite of his traits will similarly always rest upon them. And the opposite of the trait of blessing, which is with him, is malediction and curse. And the opposite of joy and peace and enjoyment which are with him is worry, strife, and pain. And these are all the evildoers' portion from God. And therefore the Torah warned us to distance ourselves from falsehood. As it is written, from a false matter, distance yourself. So you see here, the Sefer HaChinuch bumps it up to a biblical prohibition. So we see this split all the way through. The Gemara, in one Gemara, says it's only about a legal case. The Gemara in Ketubot says no in all cases, unless you're trying to maintain sort of a civil society. But generally speaking, one is not allowed to lie. And then we have the Rambam, who has no general prohibition about lying at all. We have the Sharei Tshuva, who puts it in the basic realm of a rabbinic rule. And then the Sefer HaChinuch, who says it is a biblical mitzvah d'oraita. So we're all over the place here in terms of how our tradition views this pasuk, midvar sheker tircha. Okay, Ellie.
How does this all address, like if somebody says to you, I must be brutally honest. That's an English expression. I must be brutally honest. And you know for sure you don't want to hear it because it's going to be brutally honest. And then the other thing, lying by omission, where people who are liars leave stuff out. And so you're led to believe something else. So it seems to me that when they are addressing this, it's quite simplistic. You know, don't lie, don't tell lies. But when it comes to, like Barbara said, when it comes to somebody's feelings, one thing my mother used to always say, you can find something nice to say about the bride. You can say very radiant, you know, something like that. Right. So it's very simplistic, because lying is something that I thought there was somewhere in it that said, when you lie, the damage can't always be repaired. When you steal, you can give back, you can pay money, you can somehow rectify that. But when you lie,
and it's a serious lie, the repercussions often can't be changed.
Right? Yes.
I don't really feel like this is addressing all that complexity.
Well,
or am I missing something? I mean, I could be missing
well,
something.
we're gonna see some examples in a few minutes that add a layer of complexity. But I think but the last point you made, I think, is very important. Our general position should be don't lie, because you can't fix it all the time when you lie. Now, there's no obligation for you to share every opinion you have either. Right? If you don't, like we said, if you don't like the car that someone bought, just don't say anything. And if they ask you, then you could revert back to the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot that says, well, in that case, I'm supposed to be Me'urav in Habriot. I'm supposed to be an empathetic, gentle, kind person. And I could say, yeah, I think it's lovely. But there's no obligation to volunteer negative information about something or someone. Even to them, even when I'm not talking about Lashon Hara, that's a separate problem. I'm saying you're speaking to the person and they walk into shul and you say, I don't like your dress. That's mean. That's a sin. Holding it in is a mitzvah, right? There's no obligation to say everything on our mind. Right. Don't lie means don't say words that are a lie. Now, when you're in court, you're obligated also to say the whole truth. So there could be an issue of lying by omission in court. That's true. That's true too. Because in court, you're obligated to give all of the facts. Yeah. Okay, Mom?
I just find that if you lie, you have to remember the lie and you have to remember who you told it to. Because you could say this, I don't like your dress. The next time you say, it's not such a bad dress, but you told me last time that you didn't like the dress. So you have to remember your lies, which is harder to remember than truth, because truth is truth.
That's true.
Right. That's why it's a good idea not to lie. Agreed. Okay, Linda?
And all during the rest of his life until he met with Asav, Yaakov carried that with him. The fear of Asav with him until they met. He thought that Asav was still angry with him.
Not only that, Linda, I'll jump to what was going to be the end. If you want it, right, we're still sort of struggling with how the Torah views what Yaakov did, right? What does God think about what Yaakov did? Let's look at a list of things that happened in Yaakov's life. Then I'll get you, Zach. Okay? Let's look at a list of things that happened in Yaakov's life. Okay? This is from a wonderful book called Unlocking the Torah Text by Rabbi Shmuel Golden. And he notes the following. He's not the first one to note this, but he has it in a very convenient list form. And he says as follows. The Torah text contains its own response to Yaakov's deceit. As the third patriarch's life unfolds, the clear message emerges that what goes around comes around. Whatever the explanation of Yaakov's or excuse for Yaakov's subterfuge, he is nonetheless paid back time and again and becomes the victim of deceit, right? Just like he deceived his father, he becomes the victim of deceit over and over again. Let's see. Number one, Yaakov is deceived by his father-in-law Lavan. When Yaakov falls in love with Lavan's daughter, Rachel, Lavan promises him her hand, and on the wedding night, the old switcheroo, right? So that's number one. And Lavan defends his actions the next morning in a particularly telling fashion. We don't do things like that in our place to give the younger before the elder, meaning that's what you did. You were the younger, and you took the elder's blessing. We don't do that here, meaning without saying it to him, he was saying it to him. So that's point number one, where Yaakov becomes the victim of deceit. Number two, Yaakov is deceived by Leah and Rachel. Leah's participation in the wedding night's ruse is underscored in the following dramatic midrash. The entire night, she masqueraded as Rachel. As soon as he arose in the morning, he said to her, "Daughter of a trickster, why have you deceived me?" And she responded, "And you? Why did you deceive your father?" Now, we don't really know if that conversation happened because we don't have recordings of their bedroom. But the rabbis are trying to tell us something here, that Yaakov paid the price for his deceit. Number three, Yaakov is again deceived by Lavan. Over the course of 20 years of service to his father-in-law, Yaakov is cheated on numerous occasions as Lavan attempts to avoid paying him his due. With obvious bitterness, the patriarch comments to Rachel and Leah, "You know that I served your father with all my strength, yet your father mocked me and changed my wages 10 times. Number 4, Yaakov is deceived by his son Shimon and Levi in a violent episode chronicled in Parshat Vayishlach. Shimon and Levi exact revenge upon the inhabitants of the city of Shechem. Their successful plan includes an elaborate subterfuge by which they conceive their enemies to undergo ritual circumcision. Shimon and Levi then take advantage of their weakness and they kill them. In the course of the episode, Shimon and Levi also deceive their father. Yaakov learns the truth and he's upset. Number 5, Yaakov is deceived by 10 of his 12 sons, right? When they sell and they kidnap and sell Yosef. And then I put that twice. For some reason, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, this is twice. Okay. All right. So you see that if you want to, how did the Torah feel about this? Well, it's hard to say, but Yaakov really suffers. All of his future suffering can be tied into being deceived, which is what he did to his father. Okay, Zach.
Just very quick, because we have no time, and you just mostly described what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Measure for a measure. But I want to make a very important statement. It's not accidentally that Torah, first book, Bereshit, does not have so-called legal codes. Bereshit is a book of Jewish ethic and morality. This is the essence how we see our way as a people from moral stand, not from legal stand. And this is very important to remember, because Bereshit shows us how bitter was Yaakovs' life after he deceived his father. And I wanted to mention
very good thing.
And just one comment: when he gave blessing to Ephraim and Menashe, you remember that he exchanged his hands. His son says, no, Dad, it's wrong. And I think it was paramount point for everything what was done. It was his tshuva and justification. And also, I want to say, in the whole episode, we have 4 characters. It's Yaakov and Rivka on one side, and in this plot, we got Yitzchak, innocent Yitzchak, and Asav. We could talk much more about Rivka, but it's another person that constantly exists on the background of Bereshit is Hashem. And this is our moral lesson. What's happened when you deceive someone.
Very good.
Sorry,
excellent point. That's a great point. I just want to just look at one selection of Gemara real quick to also add a little layers, like Ellie said. There's a long Gemara, and we're only going to go through 1 or 2 of them, about other situations where the rabbis thought it was okay to lie. Okay, so for example, we have this Gemara here, Masechet Yevamot, and Rabbi Eli further said in the name of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, it is permitted to lie. It is permitted for a person to depart from the truth in a manner that will bring peace. As it stated, your father commanded before he died, saying, so shall you say to Joseph, please pardon your brothers. Okay, remember, after Yaakov dies, right after his death, the brothers were afraid that Yosef would now take revenge against them for what they did to him. And what do they say to him? Your father told us to tell you not to take revenge. But we know that that's not true. At least we have no record of it. Please pardon your brother's crimes. Jacob never issued this command, but his sons falsely attributed the statement to him. in order to preserve peace between them and Joseph. Rav Natan said, it is a mitzvah to depart from the truth in order to preserve peace. It is stated, and Shmuel said, how can I go and Shaul can kill me? God responded in the next verse that Shmuel should say that he went to sacrifice an offering, indicated that God commanded one to lie in order to preserve peace. And then this one, it was taught in the school of Rabbi Shmuel, great is peace, as even the Holy One, blessed be he, departs from the truth for it. Initially, it is written when Sarah heard that she was going to be pregnant, what did she say? Va'adoni zakein, Avraham, my husband, he's an old man. He can't get me pregnant. And what did God say to Avraham when he retold the story? And in the end, it is written, and God told to Avraham that Sarah said, Va'ani zakanti, and I am old. God adjusted Sarah's words in order to spare Abraham hurt feelings that might lead Abraham and Sarah to quarrel. And you see, this is long. The Gemara goes on and on and on with different cases. You don't want to embarrass someone. You take the blame for something that someone else did because you don't want to embarrass them. So it is indeed, Elisheva, very, very complex. Our de facto, right, should be, our default position should be, we don't lie, right? We understand the Sefer HaChinuch in all situations. Midvar sheker tirchak. There are situations, however, where there's a greater value, and that's another very important lesson here, that Judaism has, when values clash, a decision has to be made. So it's true that truth is a value, but so is shalom, right? Peace is also value. Truth is a value, but so is being me'urav in habriot. So is being someone who is able to get along with other people. That's also a value. There are different values, and each one has to be weighed very, very carefully in each situation. And we also have to remember that the problem, or one of the challenges of lying, even when it's a permissible lie, is that it could lead us to lie in situations when someone in fact may be hurt. We get so used to it, we may not even realize that we are doing it. And that's a real danger. As we mentioned in the I think it was in the Shari Tshuva. So that's today's mitzvah. That's this week's mitzvah of the week, lying. And again, the source is Yaakov deceiving his father to take the birthright. And we've seen a lot of different approaches to it, and heard a lot of wonderful comments. Let me see what Andrew wrote here. I thought of Yitzchak colluding with Rivka in this subterfuge. He was close with his mother and didn't want to oppose her, may not have been that willing, but want to preserve peace. Did Rivka suffer any punishment for this? Well, I would say that Rivka did suffer punishment from this, Andrea, because her son had to run away from home for over 20 years, and she, I think she never saw him again. So that, yeah, that's tough. Yeah. Okay. Leora, I'd like to hear a court situation with prosecution and defense. Okay, great. All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for your great comments and your thoughtful participation. Always wonderful to learn with you. I look forward to seeing you next week. And yeah, we'll see. That'll be the day before Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
So I will wait till next week to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.